This evening I'm going to talk about chapter 2 of my book. I'm going to talk about the really start where it all started for me. The moment I decided that this is what I was going to do, that I was going to write this book. So I'm going to talk about my own process, I guess, of right from the start. And I'm going to share about chapter 2 with you, which is neurodiversity and the need for something different. I needed a chapter in the book that recognised neurodivergent children, neurodiverse families, because there has definitely been a notable change in the makeup of that unschooling community in terms of the route that families take to find unschooling. And a large proportion of unschooling families are neurodiverse with neurodivergent children. It is something that we experience in our family, but as I explained yesterday, so if you haven't looked at part 1, that wasn't our initial reason, but as it turns out, it was perfect. It was such a perfect fit for my children. Honestly, they weren't. They weren't. Well, I guess we're fortunate not to have had the experience of the negative impact of school on them, because they're not the sort of children that would have fit in, and they would have found the school system incredibly restrictive, and damaging. I think it's damaging for all children, but specifically children who are neurodivergent. And they're the ones who are really screaming out on behalf of all children, this isn't right. Which we talked about yesterday, the school system, how it originated, how it's developed and grown since its early days, and who has had the most influence on that, and where they were coming from, and the impact and the consequences that has had on the whole of society, not just children and not just school. So I'm going to start with why I decided to write the book, why I decided to write this book about unschooling. There are other books out there about unschooling. I highly recommend most of them. I can't recommend all of them. I haven't read all of them. This isn't the only book there is on unschooling. So from that point of view, I am just adding more knowledge, more experience, more stories, more insight into a way of life and learning that is open to everybody. And I think the more people that talk openly about it within their own capacity, not everybody can, not everybody wants to, but the better for everybody. It's why I do the podcast. So I do the podcast Unschooling Conversations. It's why I invite families onto the podcast to talk about their own stories, because of the importance of sharing those and it having an impact on one family and one child, where they hear that something else is possible, what that is, and then it in inverted commas works. And that it is a beautiful way to live your life with your children. As many of you know, I don't shy away from the complexities of that and the challenges that come along with that as well, which is why unschooling community is really important, because one of the things I learned very early on was a lovely phrase, which is unschooling questions have unschooling answers. Um, you're not going to find solutions, ideas, support to quite the same degree outside of the unschooling community from people that don't share your values or understand what it is that you are doing. So, one of my reasons was to raise awareness about unschooling. But really, there was this one event that I went to early 2020 that was organised by a lady in our home ed community, a parent, for specifically for the teenagers in our community. And at the time, my boys were just coming into their teen years. So they're my older two, my boys. And so lots of their friends were doing it. You know, we'd known this lady and her children, you know, for a few years. We knew other, you know, their friends were going. We signed up for this event, I guess, specifically aimed at teenagers, kind of talking about like the things that they enjoy, how they can like purposefully and intentionally for themselves map out what they want to do and how they want to do it. It was really beautiful. But my boys at the last minute decided they didn't want to go. It wasn't for them. But I did want to go. I was really intrigued by someone from academia, a university professor, coming and sharing this, let's call it a system, for like mapping out your kind of life goals, I guess. And they predominantly worked with people, adults, and their careers, but really focusing on what are your gifts, what are your interests, where are your passions, and trying to elicit that from the conversation, and then bringing in how to make plans. I'm not doing a very good job of explaining it. But one of the questions that came up was, what is it that you actually want to do? Which of course is the two that, you know, they didn't have to answer it. That was just one question or one pathway that they were exploring among many. But I sat there and answered it, and I knew immediately I wanted to write a book about unschooling. That's what I wanted to do. Remember, this is early 2020, so we're now 5 years later, and the book won't be published until actually next year. In fact, around about the same time, February 2026, around about the same time that this event took place. So a full 6 years later. I did also have my two younger ones with me at the time, who would have been about 6 and 8. They spent the whole afternoon making dens under tables with their friends, you know, their friends who had come with their siblings, older siblings. And they did that. I remember it because it was held in like a sports club. So like in a bar. And they'd pushed all the tables were stacked and all the chairs were stacked, and the kids were like, or the younger children were like making dens underneath these table and chairs that had been kind of pushed aside so that we could have this this meeting. I guess that was the time when I committed to writing a book. That was when I went, this is what I want to do. And one of the things they did was, you know, like, if that's what you want to do, what do you need to do to get there? And then what do you need to do to get there? And what do you need to do to get there? And what do you need to do to get there? And that just kept going until I realized that actually one of the things I needed to do was get in the habit of writing, and specifically writing about unschooling, which is when I set up the Live, Play, Learn Facebook page, and I started writing about unschooling. And so that from then on was all kind of equipping me, I guess, and getting me in the habit of writing and practicing using, articulating, unschooling and articulating what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. Those were kind of um, my three things. So, lots then happened, didn't it? We had 2020 and 2021 and 2022. And during the course of that time, I did try writing longer pieces as well. So I've written some articles for some websites and some publications. So I got in the habit of writing longer pieces as well. And then in 2023, I unexpectedly found myself with swathes of time in places that had no internet and, crucially, very few interruptions. You might gather, and you would be right, that my children weren't with me. And so I sat down and began actually committing to writing the book. And some might say that I did this a little bit the wrong way round, because I hadn't come up with a plan by that point, not a definite plan about what I was going to write in what chapter and what each chapter was going to be, and how that contributed to the whole book. I just concentrated on writing longer compositions, and then kind of trying to fit them together, and see how that went. But that worked for me. That was where I was at, and that was what I was able to do. And so I hadn't got a book publishing contract by then, and in fact I was still weighing up going the book publishing route with a publisher or whether to self-publish. But I spent about 6 months writing longer pieces and bringing them together, and seeing what transpired and unfolded. It was a very unschooly process for me, and just seeing what transpired and unfolded. But the other thing that this did for me is it did kind of equip me, I guess, and to be confident enough that when I got to the stage where I decided I was going to find a book publisher, that I knew what the book was going to be about, because basically I'd written most of it. So that's how it started. I'm going to talk a little bit more about finding a publisher another evening. Hi, Suzanne. I love your question. Do you cover PDA-friendly strategies in the book? So in chapter 2 specifically, I talk about neurodivergence. I specifically talk about autistic. I specifically talk about PDA. I specifically talk about ADHD. Throughout the book, all the families that I interviewed, and including my own experience of unschooling, all the families are neurodivergent. I would say most of them have at least one child who is PDA. So all of their stories that they share and the strategies that they use and how they navigate their family lives certainly bring PDA to the forefront. And one of the really beautiful things about unschooling is because it's based on principles. So it's based on because it's not a curriculum and you don't set out who's going to do what and when. It's based on ideas like relationship first, prioritizing relationships. And so I call that a PDA friendly strategy, because no matter what's going on, you prioritize the relationship with your PDA child. And that's going to look different because of the needs of your child, because of their neurological makeup, because of how they are feeling in the situation that they are in at the time. You can take that principle and apply it to that child in that situation. Um, and so I personally think unschooling is across the board a PDA strategy friendly approach, which is why I've included chapter 2 and why I've included neurodivergence in chapter 2 to set the scene that then from then on, whilst I don't always explicitly talk about PDA friendly strategies, they are always absolutely applicable. I think the thing that people find tricky is that it looks different. It really, like it looks so different. Like putting relationship first with your PDA looks entirely different to if you had a child without PDA. And I think people really struggle with how different life looks because it puts under the spotlight a lot of things that we, referring to chapter 1, a lot of the things that we are told are acceptable, normal. I've got 2 PDA children. One of them didn't brush his hair for years and had like a dreadlock, but not a professional one. Like a matted mass of hair at the back of his head. He didn't like changing his clothes. He looked, I'm going to use the word feral, and he looked dirty. But he was so happy. And I know for a fact that if he, his counterparts in school who were being made to do things that they didn't want to do, that resulted in, that nervous system response, that meant that they were constantly on high alert, but they looked, nice haircut and well kept and pristine clothes. They ticked all the boxes for looking like they were I think what the word is, not neglected, well looked after. My child didn't visually look not neglected or well looked after, but my child was happy, and my child was confident in who they are, and my child knew that no one was going to force him to get in a shower or get in a bath. And when he was ready, we would spend hours going through that process because we put our relationship with him first and we understood his needs. I may have gone a bit sidetracked. I think I'm kind of trying to make the point that yes, we do cover PDA in the book. One of the things I felt the whole way through the book was that I needed like a second book to really go into to how different life looks when you have PDA children. So even my own reflection would be, I could always have said more because of this notion that it looks so incredibly different. But hopefully you will, like I said, what with the families that I interviewed as well, and the examples that I give from my own experience, that there is lots there that some other families might look at and go, oh, I don't feel comfortable with that. That's a bit out of our experience. Yeah, so I think my answer is yes. That's my short answer at the end of my very long answer. Um, so chapter 2, so bringing it back to chapter 2, I guess, we sort of talked yesterday about, some children, and I don't, now the community that I live in, I don't know where these children are, but some children seem to find it really easy to comply. Like there's this that they will do what adults said. I think it's rooted in our very basic human need, essential human need of needing to belong. And so some children find it very, very easy to comply. Some children are coerced and manipulated into compliance because of the consequences of not complying as well. So I guess we could bring that aspect in too. Some children just excel at it. Like I said, I don't meet many of those children these days, but certainly as in my career as a teacher, I did meet them. They're able to do things like listen to instructions, remember rules, control their emotions and behaviours. Just like, to me these days, it sounds absolutely ludicrous that this is the expectation that we put on children at very, very young age. And it's not without its complications and its side effects, natural consequences of doing it, long-term health and well-being. If you think about relationships with family relationships, I think they're significantly impacted. And at some point, usually we see it within adolescence, so the teenage years, compliance becomes more tricky, less easy. And that's where we kind of witness what we call that, rebelling, non-compliance. Yeah, and that, I think that definitely contributes to that. But what this chapter is really focusing on is the children for whom that takes either significant effort. So I'm thinking here of children who mask, of children who comply during the hours of 9 till 3 and then come home and fall apart or shut down and cannot engage in anything outside of school hours, or have meltdowns. These are children who are putting significant effort into that compliance during the school day. And then there's the consequences, around those school hours. And then there are the children who are unable to comply, for whom, so these PDA children would be an example. ADHD children who find sitting still incredibly difficult, who find keeping their hands to themselves incredibly difficult, who find impulse control not able to do that. Children who are unable to suppress their emotions, because that's what young children are doing. It's not that they're able to self-regulate. They are suppressing their emotions in order to appear to behave a certain way so that they can either achieve some sort of reward, like a star or a sticker or, certificate of the week, or avoid punishment and, consequence for having a meltdown at school or expressing any other emotion. And so that's what they do. So children that aren't able to do that, and actually it's not healthy for children to do that, which kind of brings me to my point, because these children who aren't able to do that are, on behalf of everybody, saying this is not right. This situation that we're in, this environment that we're in, is not child friendly. And these are the children. So the point of the chapter is there is nothing wrong with these children, which of course school will have said, they need to be able to sit still. It's wrong that they can't do that. They need to be able to read. They need to be able to write. They need to be able to stand in line. They need to be able to not have a meltdown. They need to be able to manage loud noises. They need to be able to manage crowded spaces. All of that. That the child is the one who needs to change, that the child is the one who is at fault, that the child is the one who has the responsibility, is on the child to change their behaviours. There's nothing wrong with these children. They are the ones who are saying there is something wrong with the system. There's something wrong with the environment they're in. And those things can carry over into um, unschooling in terms of they will continue to tell you if there's something wrong. And if they don't do it verbally, they will show you with their actions. So they will show you with by melting down, by running away, by just not being interested in what's going on, by singing loudly in your ear, by putting their hands over your mouth if they don't agree with what you're saying or what they want to do. Sorry, I've got to have a bit of a wiggle talking about. Oh, there we go. They are the ones who will tell you. And so when we take this over into unschooling, this chapter is really here to say it's okay. There is nothing wrong with your child. Recognizing your child's needs, listening to their voice, meeting them where they are, even though it looks nothing like school, and even though they're not following a curriculum in, I don't know, photosynthesis, and they just want to like pour shampoo down. I'm talking about these things from my own experience, right? Pour out shampoo bottles all over the bathroom and create bubbles, or play Pokemon Go for days and days and days on end, um, or or play Minecraft like it's the new religion, or build dens every single day, day in and day out, and day in and day out, or just go to the park and ride a bike and climb up a slide. Um, all these things that look nothing like school, but your child is their mental health and well-being is significantly improved, where their needs are being met, where they're with someone who listens to them, takes on board what they're saying, and loves and accepts them unconditionally without making them feel like they're the ones who are wrong. There's nothing wrong with your child, and there's nothing wrong with the way that they are engaging with the world. Because if they're happy and relaxed, their ability to learn is significantly greater than when they're in places that make them feel uncomfortable and unsafe, and with people that make them feel uncomfortable and unsafe. Um, that's not to say that they won't ever have a meltdown, because they might come across a situation that they find intensely difficult. That's not to say that there won't be places where they kind of go into survival mode or they mask. But the difference is that those experiences are fewer and further between, and that they have someone alongside them who is fully supportive of them, which again, it's not what's going to happen in schools, because schools have this script that says the child is wrong, and we need to make the child change, not support them to regulate their nervous system, through co-regulation, and full acceptance of who they are. It's an entirely different experience. So hopefully I've made the point that there's nothing wrong with your child. So this chapter really includes ideas around trusting your child, radically accepting your child, and really starting to delve into a wider definition of education and learning, that is suitable for the child that you have. This chapter includes two stories and I'm sorry if anyone is here who I have interviewed. I love you all dearly for coming and sharing your stories with me, but this chapter is my favourite because of the two young people who came and shared their experience of school, the process that they went through when they came out of school, like the recovery process, that they went through and what that looked like and what that felt like, and then how they have moved into unschooling and what their life and learning looks like now. And I'm so grateful to them for sharing that. One of them, if you know her, is Chloe. And I can't remember what, she's just changed all her social media pages. Um, and so now I'm a bit embarrassed because I've mentioned her name and I can't remember. I can't remember her pages. But she's quite active on social media and very vocal about PDA and her experience of PDA, particularly how she engages with groups around her, like friendship groups, but also um, like when she went to college, her experience of that. She's moving into business and her experience of that. So she is very vocal. I'll have to try and find her links and put them in. Um, yeah, so she's a little bit older, so I think she's about 16 now. And then the other young person was about 12 when I interviewed her. Um, and yeah, it was lovely to give them a platform to be able to share their experiences, and they were things that I hear all the time. So they're not unique in any way. So there'll be lots there to for people to resonate with people, but to see their journey and how they have moved into unschooling and what they're doing and what they're doing now. And neither of them particularly look schooly, um, which is interesting and I think helpful when we're talking about PDAs, helpful in terms of seeing how other PDAs have sort of navigated their life into adulthood without going down the school route. Tomorrow we're going to be doing chapter 3, which I think is about the first year without school. So it's really about the recovery process and deschooling. So there's lots. She says, I'm just wondering if I've got that right. Have I got that right? Um, I think I might have written 2 chapters, like one on the recovery process for children and then one on the first year without school. But like the adult experience, what to expect as an adult. I said yesterday, it's so hard remembering what what you've written in each chapter. I don't know how people that do this regularly like remember. I don't know how they do it. Um, Part of the editing process is editing, and you write one thing and then it shifts into another chapter, or it gets, moved out into a different pile that says for another book. So trying to remember what the final version actually is interesting, I guess. Anyway, I'll be here at 8 o'clock tomorrow to talk about um, chapter 3. I'm actually going to have a look at my notes. Interesting. I'm not sure I've got that right at all. It's always an adventure. Come back and tune in if you miss one. Also, they're all going to be different. So you don't have to come here every evening, but if you do, there'll be different stuff. Um, so yes, I'll see you then. Thank you for joining me this evening. If you want to buy my book, you can pre-order it from Waterstones. There's a link in the chat. And if you do happen to pre-order it and send me like a DM of your confirmation, then I've got some lovely digital unschooling journals to say thank you. My thank you from me to you. Um, Yeah, so you can do that. Right, so I will let you go see your evenings. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good evening. Are you curious about unschooling and want to know more? Perhaps you're on the edge of starting this adventure, or maybe you've been doing this a while, but you're looking for inspiration. After more than 13 years of unschooling 4 children and over 5 years supporting others on the same path, I have a vast library of resources that I'm happy to share with you for free, whatever stage of your journey you're in. You can check out the link in the description of the podcast, or you can head over to my website at liveplaylearn.org and look for the free resources tab. And there you will find lots of things to inspire you to keep living, learning and playing together. I said that the wrong way round, didn't I? Anyway, it's also a great way to make sure that you don't miss an episode of the podcast, which we will get back to now.